What's up, guys? Dr. Corey here from Choffner Rehab and Recovery, and today's topic is the most commonly injured muscle in the human body, right? What is it? If you have an idea of what it might be, or if you've injured it yourself, put it down below in the comments. Typically, it happens on a reoccurring basis, and we see it a lot in football. But we also see it a lot in people who sprint, like track athletes, basketball players as well, even skaters, hockey players. Okay, this month's video series really focused on what a muscle is. We did that last week. We're talking about the most commonly injured muscle in the body today. Next week, we'll cover the different grades of muscle injuries, right? Grade 1, 2, and 3. And number 4 video, the final one of the month, we'll cover how to properly treat them. All right. So again, if you have any idea what that muscle is, and you most likely probably do have a good idea if you watched a lot of football this season, especially the NFL, comment down below. Let me know what you're thinking. All right. So what is the muscle? We'll just jump right into it, right? Most of you are probably thinking, maybe it's the shoulder, maybe it's the hip, maybe it's the lower back. It's actually going to be the hamstring muscle, right? There's actually 3 different hamstring muscles. Most people think it's just one big muscle group, and essentially it is, but it's broken down into 3 different named segments. There's a semimembranosus, which sits on the inner kind of side of the back of the thigh, sits right next to the adductor or the groin muscles. That one gets commonly kind of dealt with a lot in football players, and there's a lot of injuries to it typically because it's the kind of meaty portion. There's a semitendinosus, which sits directly in the middle. And then on the outer side of it, on the outer thigh on both legs, it's going to be the biceps femoris, okay? And it's called biceps femoris, just like your biceps muscle up here, because it has 2 heads and it runs along the outer thigh there, okay? What are the functions of this muscle? Like, how will you kind of strain it typically, or how do you provoke pain sometimes when you just have finished injuring it? It's responsible for extending or straightening the hip behind the body. So think kind of when you're running, that hip's coming behind the body, right? Or if you're just walking in general, you're going to be extending the hip. And it also flexes or bends the knee. So it works in the knee joint to bring your heel towards your butt if you're in standing. If you're doing the prone hamstring curls where you're laying on your stomach in the gym, trying to drive your heels to your butt, that's another way of working the hamstring. Okay, so just know that the hamstring crosses 2 joints. It crosses the hip joint and it crosses the knee joint, which is why it's important when you're strengthening your hamstrings to bulletproof them to prevent injury from occurring. It's important to work them from both joints, not just the knee, not just the hip, but also kind of both combined together. Okay, how does this occur, right? This is our second thing for tonight to kind of dive into. Hamstring strains commonly occur when the muscles are contracting forcefully and lengthening at the same time, okay? So it's an eccentric contraction, so to speak. So the muscles are going to be shortening or being squeezed, pulled together, and they're going to be lengthening going the other way. So picture 2 arrows going towards each other and 2 arrows going away from each other. That's essentially what's happening to your hamstring. It's being pulled together and apart at the same time. And it's just too much force for the muscle belly to tolerate, and that's why you develop a strain, which are little micro tears in the muscle fibers. All right, this commonly occurs in the last swing phase of sprinting. All right, the hamstring muscle group is maximally lengthened or stretched, right, and it works to decelerate that hip flexion and knee extension to prepare that foot to hit the ground, okay? So it almost like acts like a brake as your knee swings straight to kind of let it kind of slowly hit the ground when the foot kind of hits, okay? It kind of uses the knee as a brake to go into extension because it's a knee flexor, right? To kind of control it so it lands nice and slowly and not super forcefully, right? So you don't develop like a stress fracture or something in your foot. So the hamstrings are essentially a brake for your body when you're sprinting, especially when you need to stop and decelerate. And why does this occur? Or where does it occur, right? We can talk about both of those things. It occurs on the upper part of the hamstring muscle towards the buttock area where it attaches to the pelvis, and or on the lower part of the muscle group. It could be anywhere in the muscle belly where it attaches to the knee. And it occurs, like I mentioned before, because the muscle just cannot tolerate that amount of force exerted on it. Okay, usually it's too much force in a short period of time. It's almost like if you had a scale that capped out and it maxed out, I should say, at 300 pounds and you weighed 400 pounds, right? What would happen when you stepped on that scale? You would probably break it or it would say error and it wouldn't read. The same thing happens to your muscle group, right? If you throw too much force at it, it's going to develop little micro tears because it can't tolerate it. That's a simple thing of it, right? Another good analogy is like if you had like 100 people on a trampoline and it can only handle 50 people, they're going to develop little tears in that kind of trampoline and that whatever it's made out of, right? So that's a good analogy to use. And aggravating factors are important to note for this. If you do develop a hamstring strain, which we're talking about, right? Early on, you want to avoid things like running and hip hinging movements. Hip hinging movements like deadlifts, right? Good mornings, hamstring stretches, sometimes even kind of irritate it a little bit. So you really don't want to contract it or stretch it too much. And you want to start with isometrics essentially, because isometrics are still strengthening the muscle group and you're contracting it and shortening it, but you're not getting any joint motion. Okay, so it'd be like doing like a ball squeeze, putting a squishy ball between the knees, sitting there and squeezing it for 30 to 45 seconds, or pairing that with a bridge. And we're going to get into the exercises in a couple of weeks and a good kind of rehab three-phase plan that you can do, right, to tackle whether you're developing a grade 1, 2, or 3 strain. Because there's 3 different levels of strains, and those are going to be our topic for next week. And just know, grade 1 is the least severe, grade 3 is the most severe, usually it's a complete tear or rupture or avulsion. And the treatments are going to be different for all 3 of those. So that's why we're going to spend some time diving into it. So now you know the most commonly injured muscle in the body, which is the hamstrings. You know that there's 3 different parts of the hamstring muscles, right? Semimembranosus in the middle, back end of the thigh, semitendinosus directly in the middle, right? And then biceps femoris on the outer side with 2 heads on it. And we also know that the hamstring crosses the hip and the knee joint. It cannot tolerate too much force exerted on it like any other muscle group. Healing times can range from 3 to 8 weeks, depending on the level of injury, whether it's grade 1, 2, or 3. And the cool thing, guys, is that your muscles have a higher likelihood of healing because they're outside of the joint, number 1. And number 2, they get more blood flow than things like tendons or ligaments. So they're going to recover a lot quicker if you do develop a strain, especially if it's in the midline of the muscle belly. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember, at Choffner Rehab and Recovery, right, we reassess and pick up where traditional physical therapy left off with you guys, and we help weightlifters return 100%. All you need is a phone signal through our online process. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next week where we cover how long these muscle strains, grade 1, 2, and 3, should take to heal. All right, thanks so much, and have a great Thanksgiving. Bye.